Hey, what's going on everyone? I'm Nathan Lenhart, and let's get right into talking about this grip. So often with so many of my players, we're finding that the grip is literally the root causes of all their swing issues. Over the top, shanks, hooks, these could all be stemming from how you put your hands on the golf club. So first off, let's talk about where should we even place this in our hands. All right, so what we need to understand is I'm going to be speaking as a right-handed golfer, so you lefties out there, just switching it to the other side. Okay, so very simply, what I want to do first is think about creating a hook in the index finger of my left hand. I essentially want that grip to be at the base of that hook, and it's going to be running to the base of my pinky finger there. Okay, so in the hook to the base of the pinky finger. And you're going to find that the grip is kind of more in the fingers. I don't want to get it too much in the knuckles, or the pad of the hand in here, because that's when we start getting those fingers wrapped over the grip too much and often leads to weak grips, which we'll get into here shortly. So hook, base of the pinky finger, lightly wrap those fingertips over. And then from there, what we're going to do is just take the pad of that left hand now and just kind of sit it right into the grip gently like this and place that thumb down. Okay, it's going to be the same with that trail hand. All right, we're going to have that hook run to the base of the pinky finger. And so when we go ahead and open that up, you're going to notice, just as we said there, from both hooks to both of the base of the pinky fingers, lightly wrapping those fingers over. Okay, and then thumbs gently kind of come down. From there, learning to get into a neutral position. All right, neutral position's really important, especially in the beginning, because it allows your hands and wrists to move properly. We can, of course, adjust that based on injuries or the shots that we want to play, things like that, but definitely recommend we get into a neutral position to begin with. And so very simply, that neutral position looks like this in between the thumb and the first finger on my left hand. That line that's created here is going towards my right armpit. I want the same look to happen over here on my right hand. Okay, both of those lines now running towards my logo, my armpit, very inner part of the right shoulder, somewhere in here. And a good way that we can kind of check this on the go is setting up, keeping the hands exactly where they are, and just wrist hinging, lifting the club head up. Now I get a good bird's eye view straight down on those lines to see. And if I got my hands like this or something, I can obviously tell, okay, those lines are obviously off. All right, so this is a really good way on the go of checking that neutral grip. And aside from just looking at those lines, you know, there's the knuckles that we can look at. So nice neutral grip. I got two humps of my knuckles there that I can see as I'm looking down. I don't want to see three knuckles or just one. Two's really good. Okay, and then that trail hand, kind of same thing as I'm setting up here. As I look down or as I pick that up, I can kind of see a little bit of one knuckle. If I'm starting to see two knuckles on there, obviously too far over. And same thing the other way. If I can't see any of that index finger knuckle, then that means that hand's two under. And when we've got a neutral grip here, we're going to find that the knuckle of the thumb fits nicely into the lifeline of that trail hand. And this is a great pressure point because coming through impact, feeling that pad and that lifeline there pushing into the thumb is a really good way of feeling shaft lean, creating shaft lean, and maintaining the stable club face coming through the ball. Okay, it's a good pressure point right there. And then the last thing I usually like to point out to players is, you know, most people wear gloves. So if you do wear a glove, checking the Velcro and the logo on your glove. So when I'm setting up here with a neutral grip, that logo's kind of on a bit of an angle over here. Let's say like 30-degree angle from the straight down target. If I'm seeing a player from straight on and I can't see any of the logo facing towards the camera at all, then I know that's too weak. So I need to get them to turn that over a little bit. Now I can see a little bit here. It's kind of on an angle. Again, now if I can see the full logo, too much the other way. But that's just a good general thing. As long as we can see a little bit of an angle of that Velcro there, we know we shouldn't be too far off of neutral. And then we'll talk about some grip options. Okay, so usually when people are getting into golf for the first time, a lot of times they put their hands on separate, okay? Separate but close to each other, kind of like you would hold a baseball bat, something that you feel like you're really powerful with. Now, that's great because it's a natural feeling for most, but that way kind of has both these hands working a little bit too separately. And we want to find something that blends them together so they can kind of work as one. And so that's where we get two other options. We get the overlap, which is my left hand's on. I take the pinky of my trail hand, my right hand, and that pinky is going to go in between my index finger and my middle finger of my left hand. The other fingers of my right hand are going to get on that grip. Okay? So that's the overlap right there. And then we have the interlock. Interlock's the one I've used my whole life and most likely got into that because of Tiger Woods, because he was kind of good and I idolized him. So that's where I get that index finger of my left hand lifted off. I'm going to take the pinky finger and the ring finger and they're going to go to the side of that index finger on my left and they're going to interlock there together. Okay? It's just really nice to have an option where the hands are one unit. Okay, we want them working together versus being separate. Okay. Now we have some grip options. So now let's get into how hard to hold the club, the pressure that we're putting through there. I've always had my grip pressure at about a 6 or 7 out of 10. A lot of times I'll hear people say, hold it at a 4 or a 5, but what really we need to understand is these clubs in motion are pretty heavy, right? When I'm swinging this club back and I need to bring it to a halt, that thing ends up becoming quite heavy and hard to stop. And if I'm only holding on to that thing as like a 4 or 5, well, what do you think's going to happen? My swing's going to get long, my wrists are going to start breaking here, a lot of hinge, and I'm starting to lose control of the club face. And we find that club face is a huge issue in the golf swing. So 6 or 7 out of 10s where I've been, and we're all a little different, right? On my 6 or 7 pressure might be someone else's 9 or someone else's 4, right? Depending on how strong you are. But for your own strength, 6 or 7 out of 10 is a really good landing spot to be able to control this club face, control the shaft, be able to make sure that we're not losing it through the swing, not losing our wrist. So as I'm setting up here, that doesn't mean that I have 70% of pressure going from shoulder all the way to fingertips and I'm pretty rigid. It's quite the opposite. I have that control in the fingertips and in the wrists, but you'll notice I can still kind of waggle these elbows, all right? So that means that I'm not too tight through the biceps, elbows, forearms. They're still quite loose there, all right? So when we're practicing grip pressure and we're putting the hands on, it's always good to kind of get this feeling where we can move that club away and we feel like we're in control of it. If you're holding it what you feel is like a 4 and that thing feels super solid and you have it, great, all right? That's like we're all a little bit different on how we feel it. But I don't want to be seeing these arms locked out, and I don't want to be seeing that you're looking super rigid and tight from the upper body there, okay? Relax those elbows, nice and firm here. When we get to the top of the swing, I want to make sure that pressure is enough to withstand the weight of that club going back. And I would say when I'm kind of getting ready, I have my pressure at like a 4 or a 5. And as I'm going to take that club back, it kind of ramps up to that 6 or 7 from there, okay? Right, so now let's get into talking about some common issues that we're seeing, all right? So we talked about the neutral grip, right? But far too often, I don't see enough neutral grips on my lesson tee. There's a lot of these ones and a lot of these ones, okay? And again, these are all either in an attempt to kind of fix what's going on in the swing or that's how we started holding the club like this, and then the swing has morphed into doing all these crazy things to make up for the grip that we have, right? So first of all, when we're seeing that Velcro pointing far too much straight towards the target, this is a weak grip on the lead hand, my left hand. Okay, so now that line in between my thumb and first fingers kind of coming up to the center of my chest, even the left side of my chest. We could have, when it comes to a weak grip, we could have one hand being weak or both hands being weak. So if I'm saying weak with that right hand, now that line again could be center or left side of the chest. And vice versa, strong grip, the other way. We're showing too much Velcro towards that camera. That right hand's too much under here. I'm seeing far too much of the nails on my right hand facing towards you there in the camera, okay? The problem is when someone's got their hands on there, right, I always say to them, your hands are on here like this. Is this kind of how you walk down the street like this, right? And they'll obviously laugh and say no. I'd be like, no, okay, obviously they hang more like this, okay? So as those arms are hanging, we need to find that that's closer to where our hands should be in a neutral position, all right? This kind of stuff is only in an attempt to kind of fix what's going on in the swing, or like we said before, or that's just kind of how we learned and it feels comfortable to us. So when we're going to that neutral grip, I can't stress enough, it will feel uncomfortable, right? Changing the grip, even when we get someone to change it just a tiny bit where you'd hardly even notice, it feels really awkward to that player. And it doesn't feel powerful in the beginning. But that's okay, we have to trust it. We have to trust that if I practice this enough, which shouldn't take too long, I'll get comfortable with it. And if I get comfortable with it, I'll get confident with it, and I'll be able to get my speed back and things like that and hit it solid. All right, but at least our swing will be able to do what it needs to do or what we want it to do based on how we're holding the club, okay? And then the other common issue I see is having pressure in the wrong parts of the hands and fingers, all right? So a lot of times, me as a right-handed golfer, I'm dominant with my right hand. And so as I'm coming through to hit the ball, and this is the same with a lot of people, if I'm holding too tight with my dominant hand, it's gonna go and it's gonna wanna flip that club face over, right? My right arm starts extending and I'm trying to get this power. Well, that always tends to flip the club face shut. So in that situation, I always say to the player, okay, what I want you to do here is I want you to go ahead and tighten that pressure in your left hand, okay? Let's bump that up a couple percent and let's lower the percentage on that right hand, okay? Feels like you're just got enough to hold it. But I got a pretty good amount of pressure here in my left hand to support this club through the swing, but I'm just trying to trust that my right hand, without that pressure, isn't gonna go and wanna slam that face shut. And then vice versa, if I'm far too strong in that left hand and too weak in that right hand, sometimes we'll find that players are leaking it out to the right. And the club face is too open, so that's where you can use this knowledge to help strengthen that lower hand, and that can help us use that dominant hand to close that club face a little bit more, right? All right, so please make sure to prioritize good grip fundamentals, because if you're playing with one of those common grip issues, then you're probably just band-aiding something in your swing. And if that's the case and we have some other things to be working on in the swing, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and we'll keep working on it. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.